will tell you, and as Tim will probably tell you, there's no comparable experience in the Philadelphia sports market, I think, to being in the Sons of Ben at the Union game. And that hooked me, and I've been a season ticket holder ever since. So as a Union fan, I'm really excited to have Tim here to speak today. And after reading his bio, I think he's living the dream of any local guy working in Philly sports. Tim previously spent time with the Sixers, Eagles, and Washington Capitals. I don't know what happened there. So with the Sixers, Tim was the chief marketing guy, where among other accomplishments, he transformed the team's in-game entertainment through one of the first permanent state-of-the-art 3D core projection systems in the NBA. If you guys have ever been to a Sixers game and seen that, it's a pretty awesome spectacle. In 2004, he was as Chief Marketing Officer of the Eagles. Tim helped launch the Eagles Tackling Breast Cancer campaign, which, as you probably know, if you watch any NFL game in October, has since grown into an NFL-wide initiative. Tim earned his MBA from Harvard and his bachelor's degree from Cornell, where he was a 3-year letter winner in football. In 2011, he was named 40 under 40 by the Philadelphia Business Journal, and his brother Sean is the defensive coordinator of the Carolina Panthers. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Tim, and we're going to do things a little bit different this week. Tim's going to do a brief few-minute intro, and then I'm going to do a moderated Q&A before we open it up to questions from the members. If you like the questions, they're mine. If you don't like them, they're yours. Thank you.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I prefer to walk around. Does this come off or no? I gotta stay.
There's a hand mic.
You have a mic. Okay, good. It's great to do this, by the way. So I just learned that Matt and Troy are Sons of Ben members, so that's fantastic. I didn't know Sons of Ben members wore suits and ties, so I'm shocked. But it's great to be here. Yeah, my background is I've been in professional sports, I guess, for 21 years. Started with the Jacksonville Jaguars, then to San Diego Chargers. Then I did go to business school, got out of it for a while. Went to work for an investment bank in the summer, decided I did not want to be in investment banking, went back to the world of sports, and was Eagles twice, Washington Capitals, and then Sixers. So it's been great. It's been a fun run to be in the world of sports. The world of sports is a little bit unusual, has a unique paradigm where you're these national, maybe even international brands, but you're really mom and pop shops. There's 100 people, maybe for the Eagles, there's 300 people. So I would say that there's very few brands that exist that have a national / international presence, but really made up of 100 people running a shop, which creates great opportunity and great challenges, quite frankly. But the road to where I've got to now has been fantastic. So are we going to go into a Q&A, or how are we going to do this today? You want to ask me the questions?
Yeah, we can ask
All right,
you
I'm on the spot.
Sure.
The Budweiser hot seat?
Yeah. All right. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
First question, and again, these might be just my questions. What does a chief business officer for a professional sports franchise do?
What do I actually do? So basically I run all the business enterprise. So we have the Philadelphia Union, and then we have a USL team, which is basically a minor league team, if you want to call it that we launched in Lehigh Valley, called the Bethlehem Stehl. So anything related to the business entity, I oversee. So what we've done is we've carved out the soccer side. So to put it this way, if you are a Philadelphia Eagles fan, so there is a Howie Roseman, who's the general manager, and a coach, Doug Peterson, and then there's a Don Smolensky, who's the president. So we're set up basically identical to that. So we have a gentleman who's our general manager, called a sporting director, and his name is Ernie Stewart, with the coach Jim Curtin, who's a local guy, went to Villanova University, and then I run the business side of it. And so that's essentially how we're set up. So my role is to increase ticket sales, sponsorship sales, whether it be something on a legal matter, finding a stadium for a new team, whatever it may be. So that's basically the division of responsibilities. And then Ernie and myself meet once a week, and we talk about what's happening from both the business side and the soccer side. And just so I say, Dan, I got to pick on you as the Eagles fan, right? So Dan being the Eagles fan. So it's really interesting. I did not grow up in the soccer culture, and probably like yourself, kind of became converted. And so a couple of interesting facts. More kids play soccer than baseball, basketball, football combined. And I've got an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old. If you ask them what's their favorite sport, it's soccer. And it's almost magical and somewhat chaotic. If you go to a soccer complex on a Saturday and you see 1,000 cars at a tournament, and it's amazing. So we've got this amazing youth structure that is being built and has been being built for the last several years. The stat that I didn't know when I got here was that the MLS attendance, Major League Soccer attendance, is bigger than the NBA and bigger than the NHL. And so, I actually think it's like a secret that is too secretive. We need to tell that to people, because there are more people coming to our games than there are to basketball games, and there are to NHL games, and that's a fact. There's this groundswell from the youth community that people are now going to be growing up, and this is the fundamental difference, because I've been asked, what's the difference now than 20 years ago, because soccer's been the next big thing for 20 years. And to me, it's probably 3/4 things. One is that youth structure that I talked about, and how prevalent it is, how big it is. The coaching's getting better, the structure's getting better. So that's number one. Number two is you can now go and play on a Saturday, right? And then you can tune into the games almost every day of the week, right? You can find the games at your fingertips, whether it's on ESPN, Fox, Univision, in an app, on new media, on the website. And that didn't happen, truthfully with the media coverage, that didn't happen just 5 years ago, the way it is now. And then 3, this is a pro league, right? So now I can aspire to play in a pro league. And I say 4, and this is somewhat of a delicate statement, but as the salaries of soccer players gets bigger and greater, you'll see more interest, quite frankly, from international players wanting to play here. And quite frankly, and this is where it's a little bit delicate, but I think you'll actually see more moms and dads saying, "Hey, Johnny, stay in soccer. Okay? You can actually make some good money." I hear it all the time from my own family. I'm like, "Hey, make sure my son, TJ, make sure he's playing this because you get a college scholarship." So whether or not we want to publicly state that, I think there is a lot of pressure from that standpoint. So those ingredients, those 3/4, I think are fundamentally different than they were just a few years ago. And so the growth of soccer to me is part of the reason why I came here. I believe that the upside is huge, absolutely huge. And there's obviously some other socioeconomic, but some, if you look at concussion issues that are going on right now on the football side, that's a real legitimate concern. Not that you don't have it in soccer, but the design of football is to have a collision every play. And that's not what soccer is designed to have. So I do think there are parents, and look, I'm one of them right now, that is saying, I don't know about putting my kids into football right now. There's just not enough information, in my opinion, in terms of what the impacts are. So anyway, that's in a nutshell kind of what I do and how I got here. I work with a great ownership group. We have about 12 folks in our ownership group. Rob, Chris Piccini, many of you guys probably know, are part of that ownership group, and we're instrumental in the union coming to be and where the franchise is located.
Thank you. Next question, you kind of touched on this actually. Maybe you have touched on all of this one. You worked for the Eagles and the Sixers. What attracted you to a growing franchise like the Union?
So it is a bit what I was saying. I've always wanted to be in a position of being able to run a franchise, a sports franchise. I think when you're on the business side, this is where it's maybe difficult for some people to understand. The running of the business is very similar, whether it's football, baseball, basketball, hockey, soccer, it's fairly similar. The ways you make money, there's 6, 7 different ways. They're all very similar. The amount of money probably changes, but the idea of running something like that doesn't, it's really similar. So I can go from baseball to football to soccer, and it's not that big of a deal.
Tim, could you just hold the mic up a little?
Oh, yes, you got it. So for me, you know, when I look at where do you go to work, you want a situation where I think you can positively change something. And I felt that the union were at that point where they could leapfrog a little bit, and from an ownership standpoint, you know, with sort of ownerships involved and kind of deliveries that they allow you to take. So I felt pretty comfortable with that standpoint.
Thank you. Now, obviously, Philly's a crowded sports market. How are the union assimilating into the Philadelphia sports culture at this point?
So I would say this. When I got here, I outlined 9 steps to change the growth of the union. And one of those steps I talked to you earlier is really creating more brand awareness. And there's a couple different ways you can do that, right? You can advertise your way into that. You can do it from an earned media standpoint. And that is an area that I think is very hard for us right now. You know, having traditional media talk about soccer, it's not where we are right now as a sport yet. And so that's an area that I do feel that we have to continue to chip away at and get more of that. I publicly have stated that I get frustrated when I hear people say Philadelphia is a 4-for-4 town. I say, no, it's not. It's a 5-for-5 town, right? And I'll say, you know, again, the stats that I said, that more people come to our games than come to NBA games. So there's also 65 to 100 whatever years of tradition between the Phillies and the Sixers and the Eagles. So I'm not naive to the fact that we're a young brand. We're still a startup, an 8-year-old startup relative to the other teams. And on some level, if you measure it in just an 8-year period, it's pretty amazing what in 8 years the union have done. But we still need to figure out how do we differentiate ourselves in this market. And so we're going through a little bit of a brand strategy exercise of what does that look like? And down to literally like who we're marketing to, or is this just about getting to millennials, to what sort of attire we wear? I happen to wear lots of suits, and I'm hearing from a lot of my staff that I shouldn't. So we're looking at, you know, how do we dress differently, and you know, it's like I said, if you went to an Abercrombie and Fitch store, right, which I'm guessing not too many people here have gone to Abercrombie and Fitch stores. So,
Okay.
but there's a look, right, to the people who work there, right? And I said, you know, it's almost like we're characters in the Disney story, and so we, as the staff, also have to carry that look. And so we're figuring out, like, what is our differentiation? And are we gonna be uber family, right? Or are we gonna be a little more brash and edgier? And those are some of the decisions that we have to make. So, but I think it requires us to look and act a little bit different for us to cut through the clutter.
The union is our closest major sports franchise to Delaware. Does the union have any marketing or community activities that are focused on Delaware?
So I'll start this way. So here's our top 10, if I can remember these. Our top 10 fan bases: Westchester, not in any particular order. Westchester, Downingtown, Lansdale, Media, Haverford, Glenside. Did I say Philadelphia? Philadelphia's in there. So what's interesting is we're very much Chester County, Montgomery County, Delaware County. We have not done a good job to get into Philadelphia, right? Downtown Philadelphia, and even Bucks County. And so I believe it's in that pecking order, if I go by counties, then after some of those becomes Newcastle County. So this is a really interesting question of, are there more, do we follow the money, to use that term? Meaning, do we go into the Westchesters, into the Lansdales, into the Downingtowns, because we know that's where our fans are, and we double down, right? Because we haven't saturated that area. Just penetrate that area more, we know our fans are there. Or do we take resources and allocate it into some of these other maybe untapped areas? And it's a debate that we're having right now as to what the right approach is. For now, like 5 years from now might be a different answer, but for now, I'm still thinking that we need to go to, you know, fish where the fish are. We know that they're in the Westchester and Downtowns and some of the, you know, the suburban areas. We know that there's fans there that have not been tapped into. So from my standpoint, one of the things that I've seen as a parent of 2 kids, my kids are in, they play in the Westchester United soccer program. It's a really big program. And I haven't felt that the union always did a great job connecting to me as a parent or to me or to my kids. And so one of the things we're trying to do is, if you have this massive landscape of kids playing soccer, how do we connect with them better than what we've already been doing? Which makes me feel like there's still low-hanging fruit in some of those core audiences. So instead of maybe diluting ourselves just yet, I think there's still opportunities in those core audiences.
I'll just add to that. My son was in a YMCA soccer camp, and John McCarthy was there one day, and my son thinks he's best friends with John McCarthy.
Awesome.
John McCarthy's the goalkeeper, so.
By the way, can I touch base on one thing? So for many of you who may not be soccer fans, because I do think, as I said earlier, I did not grow up, as a soccer person per se, and there's some misperceptions that I had. These guys run 8 to 9 miles a game. 8 to 9 miles a game. And then in that 8 to 9 miles, they'll run a 4.40. So the first game this year we played the Dallas team, FC Dallas. And I was watching the game, and this one guy on the team was really fast. And so after the game, I said to our coach, I was like, hey, this guy, really fast, huh? And he's like, yeah, he runs a 4.340. And I was like, a 4.340? That's as fast as any D-back in the NFL. He's like, oh yeah, and inside that game, so he ran the 4.340, but he has to also run 8 miles that game too. And so there's this misperception, I think, about what it means to be a soccer player, right? And let me tell you something, this is hard. I went out the other day, played a staff soccer game, and I haven't played since again. I'm seeing spots. Right? I am seeing spots. I'm like, holy crap. So there is some PR work that we have to do, because the game is more physical from a fitness standpoint than you might expect. And I'll also say from the standpoint of just generally rough, tough, collision type stuff, there's a lot more to it. There is a heck of a lot more to it. It is meaning that you're going to get banged up. You're going to be hitting a lot more than I think the average person thinks. And so I now that I'm into it and I'm seeing it, I understand why they call it, the beautiful game. I do understand that now. And I do understand how there's if you want to talk about the best sports environment in Philadelphia, when I was at the Philadelphia 76ers, we used to talk about the Sons of Ben as the best live sports event in Philadelphia. So I don't say that now because I'm in these shoes. I say it now because this is what I said when I was at another competitor. And it is different by any other team standards. It is completely different. The Sons of Ben, quite frankly, helped make it so different. There's not a bad seat in the house. You're on the Delaware River. It's a fascinating, beautiful stadium. It's easy to get in, easy to get out. We're the cheapest price ticket by far in amongst the other sports teams. So if you look at all these ingredients, it really starts to feel like this is a sport that's poised to really grow, really grow.
It's like you read my script. Actually, this question, and you did kind of hit on it, but maybe just 1 or 2 reasons. If anybody here has just never been to a union game, what would you say? A or B? Why should you come?
Yeah, again, the view, if you're in the stadium, looking out at the water, the big ships go by, it's beautiful. You can literally buy a ticket for $20 and have, I would say if you sat in a $150 seat at an Eagles game or a Phillies game, it's the equivalent seat for $20. The energy is, I think it's unlike anything in sports. The chants, the cheers, how you're part of it, it really is very unique and very different. And I think now for us, we made some changes on our soccer side of the house where we are very poised to be a good team for the next probably 3 to 5 years. So if you look at the players that are on our team, we start 3 rookies. We have a goaltender who's 25, 26, who's an MLS All-Star. We just signed what's called a DP, a designated player, for $1 million, who will be with us for the next 3 or 4 years. So if you look at the foundation that we have, we're actually poised to have at least provide hope of a good team every year. So you're going to come down and you're going to see a good team that plays, we pride ourselves on, and this is really interesting, our coach, Jim Curtin, takes a lot of pride on creating an environment where the players play like Philadelphians. That means something to him. So he wants the guys to be blue collar, to be tough, to if you fall down, you pick yourself up type person. And it's really interesting. Sometimes I think he stresses it too much, but he really, as a Philadelphia guy, he wants that to come through in the type of players that we have on the team. So it's cool. I like that. I think people can relate to that.
Last question before we open up to other questions. You've worked in sports a really long time. I have to ask, any good sports stories you can share?
I probably should have read that one. Yeah, I'm sure there are. Let me think. When I was, this is probably not a great story, I don't know. I remember when I started as an intern at the Jacksonville Jaguars, and this is definitely not something you want to do, but so you work a ton of hours. When you work in football, you work a lot, especially if you're on the football side. So I started on the football side, and so my responsibility was, I was the intern, but I was in the football operations. So it's helping the coaches, it's working with salary cap, and the stories that you hear about people working crazy hours are true. My brother, he's gotten better actually, but he would sleep in his office probably 4 or 5 days a week. I would get 3.5 hours of sleep a night. And so those are true stories. It's not fabrication. And so when I started in the business, I remember I was in Jacksonville Jaguars, and the practice fields were kind of off adjacent to the stadium, and we were playing the Detroit Lions. So they set me up into the control room of the stadium. And in the control room, we can control the volume. So what we were doing was we were turning on the crowd sounds so that our team could get used to hearing how loud it's going to be. But because it was in the control room, I couldn't see the team practicing. So I had no idea where they were in the script. So what happens in a football practice is it's all scripted, right? So at 10 o'clock you're on session period 1, and 10 you're on period 2. So I had a radio, a walkie-talkie radio. They set me up there, and they said, we'll tell you when to turn it on and when to turn it off. Just go up there. So, practice is an hour and a half, 2 hours. So I go up there, I'm exhausted. Like, I am so exhausted. And, I'm the young guy, and I'm sitting now in a room by myself. So I sit there, test, you got me? Yep, got it. Now I'm just by myself. So I might have fallen asleep just a little bit. Just a little bit. So I pop up and I'm like, I haven't heard anybody on this radio calling me in a while. It seems weird. So I looked down the radio and I had turned the volume all the way down. I don't know where or how I did this. So when I turn it back up, all you hear are 4-letter expletives coming out from the general manager towards me, and so Tom Coughlin was the coach there. Tom Coughlin, he's fairly tough. He's fairly tough. So that was not one of my my better days. I didn't think I was gonna have a job after that. But anyway, so anyway, it's a really fun environment because I think you're part of the fabric of the community. What you do really matters. You put smiles on people's faces, or you put frowns on their faces. So it's enjoyable, it's fun, and I think to a certain degree it's why you see, folks who've made a lot of money in other businesses, buy teams and want to become part of it, and go from, I've seen businessmen who are, obviously billionaires who lived in anonymity, and then all of a sudden they become an owner of a team, and it's very different, and their public personas change, and it's different. It's a lot of fun, requires a lot of energy, and you're constantly on. You are always on. But it's great. What else?
Questions?
Oh, okay. I'm starting with the most. the religious side of the house here first. Oh, wait, okay, geez, all right. You mad at me.
Hey Tim, thanks for being here. Have you ever laid in bed at night wanting to be your brother? And, you know, have you flirted with trading places with him?
Yeah.
If you do it for a week, a season, why would you, why wouldn't you?
So, yeah, great question, and the answer is yes. I have. I love the competitive nature of sports, and I just like competition in general. So I tell everybody, when you come to work for me, business is competition. I see it that way. So if you come with the idea that you're going to compete from a business perspective, I like that. And so the nice thing about a sports environment is there's a win and a loss, right? There's an outcome every week. So I like that. The downside to it is what I said earlier, is the lifestyle and the hours. And I've watched a lot of people give up a lot on a personal level who are coaches. Now, I don't want to say this, and the NFL is a very, very unique situation because the number of hours that they put in is to the higher end of the spectrum, maybe relative to some other sports. But yeah, you know, I think he's done a great job. I think it's fun to be on that side of the house where you truly do impact the wins and losses. I will say this. One time I was, where was it? New Orleans Saints, and I was with the Eagles, and my brother was with the Eagles, and we got beat pretty badly. And I was on the bus with a bunch of sponsors on the bus, and we were watching. I think it was a Monday Night Football or a Sunday Night Football. So on the bus with the sponsors, the whatever post game show on ESPN's on, and they're talking how the Eagles didn't play very well, and a counterpart of mine walked up to the front of the bus, turned off the TV, so everybody sat there in darkness. Which I thought, really, like, you know, these are sponsors, like, didn't think that was a great move. And it's really interesting because I leaned over the guy, and he's like, and I said, God, that Saints offense is really good. Blah, blah, blah. He's like, you can't talk to me for 45 minutes. Like, I need to decompress. And this was a guy who was on the business side. And it's interesting for me because I'm closer maybe than most to it, see my brother and what he does as a coach. I've always kind of known my role. And at the end of the day, I didn't draft a player. I didn't call a play. I didn't stay up to 3 in the morning designing a playbook. And so what would happen is after games, me and my brother actually lived right next door to each other. And we would, you know, get together with our families after the games. And if they lost, he was upset. But he had to get on to the next game. And conversely, if they won, he was not doing cartwheels, right? And so he kind of lives in this very like even keel mode. And so I always saw that and felt, if he's not doing the cartwheels because they won, you know, why is me as a business guy should I be, you know, doing the high fives and doing the cartwheels? And conversely, why should I be on mopey? You know, I didn't sleep in my office and get 2 hours of sleep. So I've always kind of taken that approach to it and trying to maybe, and then again, my perspective may be a little bit different because I see it so firsthand.